Peter Kuznick is Professor of History and Director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University. Professor Kuznick is live in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Professor. With the recent developments and advances made by Russia in parts of Ukraine, including Kharkiv, how would you gauge the war at this juncture?
At this point, Russia is clearly on the offensive. The Ukrainian forces are underarmed, undermanned, and in a state of retreat right now. So Zelensky keeps on holding out the hope that they're going to drive all the Russian forces out of Ukraine before they sit down and negotiate. What's happening now is just the opposite. The Ukrainians are faced with severe losses on the battlefield, losing ground on the battlefield, and Russia is clearly the one on the offensive right now.
Professor, do you also foresee a new plan by President Putin and Moscow attacking new multiple fronts in the coming days or weeks?
Well, Russia is already advancing on Kharkiv, pushing the Ukrainian forces back. They're stretching the lines thinner in the south and the east. Whether or not they want Kharkiv itself or they just want this buffer zone, but they're getting close enough to Kharkiv to be able to hit it with much more artillery. Then there's also the possibility of them going after Odessa. So the sooner the Ukrainians agree to negotiate, look for a diplomatic solution, the better off Ukraine will be, because they're losing manpower, the economy is being destroyed, and their negotiating position is weakening.
Professor, there has also been the issue of arming Ukraine. What's your view on Germany and France when it comes to bolstering Ukraine? Do both countries have a unilateral or divergent stance on weaponizing or bringing weapons to Ukraine?
Well, that's a big part of the concern right now, that many of the Western countries, seeing how weak Ukraine is and how desperate Ukraine is, they are taking a more aggressive stance rather than a diplomatic stance. We see that with Cameron and the Brits saying that Ukraine can use British weapons to strike deep in Russia. We see Blinken effectively giving the okay for the use of American weapons to strike inside of Russia. We see Macron calling for sending NATO troops on the ground into Ukraine. We see the increased use of trainers. When sophisticated weapons arrive, the Ukrainians in many cases are not capable of deploying them. And so you're going to have more and more NATO troops there and trainers and experts. Zelensky is calling for NATO trainers inside of Ukraine so they'll be able to deploy the forces more quickly. This is all creating a much more dangerous situation. The situation is growing more dangerous, more desperate by the day right now. And so we need to step back from this, because we are pushing for something that could lead to an expanded war and potentially a world war at this point.
Professor, we'll have to leave it there. I've been talking to Peter Kuznick, who is a professor of history and director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University. Professor Kuznick, as always, thank you very much for talking to us today.
My pleasure.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.